Well, welcome to episode 4. This last week I've been focused on the re-rigging of the boat and getting the boat out sailing under a jury rig. More about the jury rig sail shortly. I've got a significant do list for the re-rigging of Mushka, so that's been occupying a bit of my attention. I'm replacing the existing 18mm stainless steel wire rigging with 8mm 19x1 dyform stainless steel wire. Dyform's just a much denser stainless steel wire which provides greater strength. It's slightly heavier but certainly stronger. And I'll also be doing maintenance and replacement as needed on sheave boxes and turnbuckles and other hardware associated with the standing rigging and also the running rigging as well. There are several other tasks which will include putting the inner forestay on a high-filled deck fitting that will enable me to easily remove the inner stay in circumstances where I want to freely tack my head sails on the outer stay. Another important task is the strengthening of the midships chain plates for the forward and aft lower shrouds. The current stainless steel chain plate just doesn't run deeply enough. It's through bolted to the bulwark of the boat, but I want to extend that further down to the hull and through bolt it further down as well. And that's going to provide, give even more strength to what is a critical fitting. Like most things with a boat, this work shouldn't take as long as you think it might. I've given myself 2 weeks for this, but hey, it is a boat. Everything seems to take just a little bit longer. So we'll check in on the rigging progress over the next week or so, but right now let me just take a look at my jury rig. The race requirements are that we sail a 9-mile triangular course for a minimum of 6 hours in open water, and so that required a bit of thinking in terms of what's going to work in terms of the jury rig. And when I say sail it, you've got to sail it with your mast off, so you know it's a major undertaking. So this was the opportunity to do that with the boat being re-rigged. And I had a first attempt at this in lighter conditions, sort of 10-knot conditions, and they were it was very slow progress with the rig that I had. Difficult to even get 2 knots out of those 10-knot conditions. But I was fortunate to have some stronger weather come through a few days later, and what I've got here now is a video which captures for the race organisers actually the sail under jury rig, and here it is. This is a report on the performance of my jury rig on my Tradewind 35 Mushka, conducted in Port Phillip Bay, Victoria, Australia on May 23, 2016. Conditions on the day were fresh to strong. Winds were 25 to 30 knots, predominantly from the west to northwest during the morning, which went to west-southwest later on in the afternoon, which actually helped me significantly. You can see here that I've captured the track on my Navionics on my iPhone. Unfortunately, it died. My phone died at the end, so the trip home, which was a downwind run, isn't the track's not captured on this. But I'll just walk through how the day went. I headed out of the marina at about 10 o'clock and headed pretty much due south, 180 to 190. Well, magnetic was my bearing. And I maintained that bearing until about 12:15. And at that stage I'd done 5 nautical miles on that bearing. At 12:15 I tacked pretty much pointing into what started off as a west, it was still west-northwest, and frankly was a bit difficult running at sort of 310 to 300 degrees pointing. However, after literally just being at that for 10 minutes, a more southerly influence came onto the wind, and it went west-southwest, which helped me with my northwesting bearing. On that northwesting bearing, I did 8 nautical miles, at which point I then jibed and had pretty much the wind off my stern quarter, and that took me home for the last 3 to 4 nautical miles. It was just over 3 nautical miles, and I was on a bearing there of 120 to 130 degrees magnetic. As I say, just on 17 nautical miles, on just over 6 hours of sailing. Of the actual sailing itself, just to sort of demonstrate what all that looked like, and you can see here it's quite fresh. This is on the first run down south on what's the beam reach, and you can see the configuration I've got here. I'm using my it's just under 4 metre spinnaker pole, and I'm using my storm jib with the top really folded over. The luff is folded over the last couple of eyes, and I'm using a trysail as a jury main, if you like. All this worked actually reasonably well, although I've got some lessons learned which I'll address at the end. But I was pleased that in quite fresh conditions, the rig stood up, and I was actually able to make progress. I averaged just under 3 knots, and a lot of that was just the strength of the wind. I'd had the boat out a couple of days earlier in much lighter conditions, and frankly had very, very slow progress in the lighter conditions. So, well, these fresher conditions were a good challenge for the rig. They also enabled me to sort of move along and do 17 odd mile in just over the 6-hour period. You can see here that this is on the south run on the beam reach. This shot here is of the east southeast run back to the club, where I ran with just the headsail. In terms of the anchor points for the rig, I've used, as I said, one of my spinnaker poles, which is a 4 metre, just under 4 metre pole, which is fixed onto the deck through its parrot beak, and it's on an eye. It's a spinnaker eye, which would normally be on the mast, which I've fixed as a strong point onto the deck and have it back plated through the deck into the ceiling, and it's got a stainless steel backplate inside. It's pretty easy just to clip that on. There are then a connection of stays which are to the bow. I'll just deal with that first. I've had cable cut to size, and you can see this this bow fitting with a shackle there, and then there are two midship stays, and then at the stern there's two stays to the stern as well. Overall, I've got a couple of blocks up the top to enable the raising and lowering of the head sail, which in this instance I was using the storm jib and also the trysail. The trysail is not orange, it's white. I'm getting a new trysail made up, which will be orange, but it will be of the dimension of the trysail that I used in this. So that was an important prerequisite for the race event itself to have been completed. But something more mundane is my starboard fuel tank, which when I bought it clearly had a leak in it, and this picture here is me trying to work out under pressure testing where that leak was. First of all, how big was it, and could I at least detect where it was before undoing the boat. These fuel tanks in these boats, and there's two of them. There's a starboard one which got about 80 litres, and a port fuel tank of about 120 litres, both in their respective lazarettes in the cockpit area. They're designed to never move. They're bonded in with 8mm thick marine ply, and then that capsule is bonded to the hull of the boat with fiberglass. So getting into this starboard tank and getting the tank out was no small feat, and there's just a few shots here of the work in progress, with the tank on the dock and a newly fabricated aluminium tank fitted in, and again the reverse process of bonding it in with marine ply and a fiberglass seal around it that provides for it to be both waterproof and secured to the inside of the hull. So with 108 weeks to go now, perhaps not such an interesting week of activities, but all the sort of necessary things that go on in the background that are perhaps less obvious in the preparation for an event such as this. So if you're less interested in those three things this week around rigging, jury rigs and the fuel tanks, then I apologise for that, and I'll endeavour to bring you some more interesting things to do with sailing in the weeks ahead. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week.